The emergency beacon cut through the void like a dying scream, its signal barely detectable above the cosmic background radiation. Commander Zurachan's patrol ship, the Meridian, had been conducting routine sweeps along the outer rim when the distress call reached them. The coordinates led to a barren moon orbiting a dying star, a place where no sentient species should survive more than a few hours. "Ma'am, the signal is coming from the surface," reported Lieutenant Torres, his fingers dancing across the sensor array. "But the readings are strange. Life signs are present, but they're weak, very weak." Zara studied the holographic display floating before her. The moon's surface was a hellscape of jagged rocks and toxic atmosphere, with temperatures that would freeze most beings solid within minutes. Whatever had crashed there wouldn't last long. "Take us down," she ordered. Emergency landing protocols. The Meridian descended through the thin atmosphere, its hull groaning against the pressure changes. Through the viewports, they could see the wreckage of what had once been a sleek transport vessel, now scattered across the rocky terrain like broken bones. Steam rose from various impact sites where hot metal met the frozen ground. As they landed, Zara's team prepared for the worst. The environmental suits were necessary. The moon's atmosphere was barely breathable and filled with toxic compounds that would kill most species within an hour of exposure. But humans, with their stubborn biology and adaptive nature, might survive longer. "Thermal scans show multiple life forms in the main wreckage section," Torres announced. "But, Captain, one of the signatures is moving. It's outside the ship." Zara's blood ran cold. Nothing should be able to survive outside that wreck for more than minutes. She grabbed her equipment and headed for the airlock, her team falling in behind her. The surface of the moon was even more hostile than their scans had suggested. The ground crunched beneath their boots, a mixture of ice crystals and sharp volcanic glass that would shred unprotected skin. The wind howled with a sound like dying animals, carrying particles that sparked against their suit visors. Following the thermal readings, they made their way toward the wreckage. The transport ship had been elegant once, probably carrying wealthy passengers or important cargo. Now it was a twisted mass of metal and composite materials, torn open like a flower blooming in reverse. "There," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's medic, pointing toward a section of hull that had been peeled back like a can opener had attacked it. "I see movement." What they found defied every piece of medical knowledge they possessed. A human woman, barely conscious, was crouched over something small and still. Her clothing was inadequate for the environment. A simple jumpsuit that should have offered no protection against the moon's brutal conditions. Her lips were blue, her skin pale as death, but she was alive. More importantly, she was protecting something. "My God," Dr. Kim breathed, kneeling beside the woman. "She's hypothermic, malnourished, and showing signs of severe exposure. She should be dead." The woman's eyes fluttered open as they approached. They were fierce, determined, holding a spark that seemed impossible given her condition. She tried to speak, but only a hoarse whisper emerged. "The cubs," she managed, her arms tightening around the bundle she held. Zara carefully moved closer and saw what the woman was protecting. 5 small forms, clearly alien in nature, with fur that sparkled like starlight and large, dark eyes. They were barely breathing, their small bodies pressed together for warmth. "She's been shielding them," Dr. Kim said in amazement, using her own body heat to keep them alive. In this environment, that should have killed her hours ago. The woman's head lolled to one side, but her grip on the alien cubs never loosened. Even unconscious, her body continued to curl around them protectively, a human shield against the moon's deadly embrace. "How long has she been out here?" Torres asked, scanning the area with his equipment. Based on the wreckage pattern and the beacon's activation time, Zara calculated quickly, at least 3 standard days. Maybe more. 3 days. On a moon where most species would die in 3 hours. 3 days without food, water, or proper shelter, keeping 5 alien cubs alive with nothing but her own body's warmth and an indomitable will to protect the helpless. "Get them aboard," Zara ordered, her voice thick with emotion she rarely allowed herself to show. "All of them." Emergency medical protocols. As they carefully lifted the woman and her precious cargo, Zara couldn't help but marvel at what she'd witnessed. This was humanity at its core. Not the advanced technology or the vast fleets, but the simple, stubborn refusal to let innocents die, even at the cost of their own lives. The woman stirred slightly as they moved her, and her eyes focused on Zara with startling clarity. "Are they safe?" she whispered. "They're safe," Zara assured her. "You saved them." A small smile crossed the woman's cracked lips before unconsciousness claimed her again. The rescue was complete, but the story of what had happened on that frozen moon would haunt Zara for years to come. It would become legend among the galactic community, another tale of human impossibility, of the species that simply refused to accept defeat when protecting others was at stake. The medical bay of the Meridian hummed with activity as Dr. Kim worked frantically to stabilize their rescued patients. The human woman lay on the primary treatment bed, her body temperature slowly rising under the influence of thermal regulators and warming blankets. The 5 alien cubs were arranged in an incubator nearby, their vital signs weak but steady. "Her name is Elena Vasquez," reported Ensign Mitchell, reading from the recovered passenger manifest. She was traveling as a cultural exchange specialist aboard the transport ship Harmony. The vessel was carrying a diplomatic delegation from the Kitharus system. Zara studied Elena's peaceful face as the medical equipment worked to repair 3 days of damage to her system. Even unconscious, there was something fierce about her features, a determination that seemed carved into the very structure of her bones. "What about the cubs?" she asked. Dr. Kim adjusted the incubator's settings carefully. "They're Kitharan young, probably nobility based on their genetic markers. Their species is cold-blooded and extremely vulnerable to temperature fluctuations. In their natural environment, they would never survive without constant parental care and optimal heating conditions." "So, what happened to their parents?" "We found the adults in the main passenger compartment," Mitchell said quietly. "They didn't make it. The impact and subsequent exposure killed them within hours of the crash." Zara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the moon's cold reaching through the ship's hull. Elena had found these orphan cubs and somehow kept them alive for 3 days using nothing but her own body heat and willpower. The medical readings Dr. Kim was showing her made it clear just how impossible that should have been. Her core temperature dropped to levels that should have caused cardiac arrest, Dr. Kim explained, pointing to the scrolling data on her screens. Her metabolism slowed to almost hibernation levels, but instead of shutting down, her body seemed to redirect all available energy to heat production. "I've never seen anything like it." "Humans do that sometimes," Zara mused, remembering stories from her academy training about human endurance records that defied scientific explanation. "When we're protecting something, we find ways to push past our biological limits." Elena's eyes fluttered open, immediately seeking out the incubator containing the cubs. Her hand moved weakly toward them, and Dr. Kim quickly intercepted it. "They're safe," the doctor assured her. "You need to rest and let your body recover." "The little ones," Elena whispered, her voice still hoarse but stronger than before. "Are they really okay? I tried to keep them warm, but I wasn't sure if it was enough." Zara moved to her bedside, pulled by something she couldn't quite name. "You saved their lives. Against impossible odds, you kept them alive for 3 days on one of the most hostile moons in this sector." Elena's eyes filled with tears. Their parents died in the first few hours after the crash. The cold took them so quickly. But the cubs, they were so small, so helpless. I couldn't just let them die. "Why?" The question slipped out before Zara could stop it. "You didn't know them. They weren't your species. You almost died keeping them alive." Elena looked at her with surprise, as if the question made no sense. They were babies, innocent babies who had done nothing wrong and were going to die because of circumstances beyond their control. How can I not try to save them? Dr. Kim checked Elena's vital signs and nodded with satisfaction. Your recovery is remarkable. Most beings would need weeks to bounce back from what you endured. How do you feel? Tired, Elena admitted. And hungry. I haven't eaten in how long has it been? 3 days and 14 hours since the crash, Zara replied. You went without food for all that time. Elena shifted uncomfortably. There were some emergency rations in the wreckage, but they were protein-based and designed for Kithran physiology. I tried them the first day, but they made me sick. I figured it was better to save my energy for keeping the cubs warm than to waste it being ill. The casual way she said it, as if starving herself to death was a perfectly reasonable decision, left the entire medical team speechless. Dr. Kim's scanner showed that Elena had been running on nothing but water and sheer determination for the better part of 4 days. The cubs needed constant warmth to survive. Elena continued, seemingly unaware of the stunned looks she was receiving. Their body temperature has to stay within a very narrow range, or their organs start shutting down. I learned that from working with their cultural delegation. So I just held them close and tried to share whatever heat I could. For 3 days, Torres said, shaking his head in disbelief. In sub-zero temperatures, without food, barely any shelter. What else was I supposed to do? Elena asked genuinely. Let them die. That simple question hung in the air, like a challenge to the universe itself. What else was she supposed to do? As if there had been any choice at all. As if a human being, faced with helpless innocence, could ever do anything but sacrifice everything to protect them. The Kithran government has been notified of the rescue, Zara said. They're sending a ship to meet us at the nearest station. They want to thank you personally for saving these cubs. Elena waved the comment away, dismissively. I don't need thanks. I just need to know they'll be okay. Will they be reunited with family? The cubs are from the royal household, Mitchell reported. Their parents were minor nobles, but they have extended family who will care for them. You've saved not just their lives, but an entire bloodline. Good, Elena said simply, closing her eyes again. That's all that matters. As Elena drifted back to sleep, Zara found herself staring at this unremarkable woman who had done something truly extraordinary. There was nothing special about Elena Vasquez on paper. She was a cultural specialist, not a soldier or explorer. She had no special training in survival or combat. She was just a human being who had found herself in an impossible situation and had chosen to do the right thing, regardless of the cost. Captain, Dr. Kim said quietly, I've been running some calculations. Based on the environmental conditions and Elena's physical condition, when we found her, she couldn't have survived much longer. Maybe another 6 to 8 hours at most. Zara nodded grimly. They had arrived just in time. But Elena hadn't known that. As far as she was concerned, she might have been facing days or weeks of slowly freezing to death while keeping those cubs alive. And she had been prepared to do exactly that. Make sure she gets the best care possible, Zara ordered, and send a full report to command. This is the kind of story that needs to be recorded properly. The kind of story that would spread throughout the galaxy, she thought. Another impossible tale of human stubbornness in the face of death, of a species that simply refused to let innocents perish on their watch. The journey to Nexus Station took 4 standard days, during which Elena recovered with the kind of resilience that both impressed and worried Dr. Kim. By the second day, she was sitting up and insisting on helping care for the Kithran cubs, despite protests from the medical staff. They know my scent now, Elena explained as she gently stroked one of the cubs, who had begun to purr, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. It comforts them. After everything they've been through, they need that stability. The cubs had indeed bonded with their human savior in a way that fascinated the xenobiologists aboard the ship. Kithrans typically took weeks to form attachments, especially to alien species, but These 5 little ones became agitated whenever Elena was out of sight for more than a few minutes. Zara watched this interplay with growing interest. She had submitted her report to command, detailing the rescue and Elena's remarkable survival. But she suspected the full implications of what had happened were only beginning to unfold. "Commander Chun," came a voice from the bridge communications. "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Kithran Royal Fleet. They're requesting immediate conference with you and Miss Vasquez." The main conference room had been converted into a diplomatic meeting space, with Elena sitting somewhat nervously across from a holographic projection of what appeared to be the most elaborately dressed alien Zara had ever seen. The Kithran High Chancellor's scales shimmered with embedded jewels, and their elaborate headdress spoke of incredible wealth and power. "Cultural Specialist Vasquez," the Chancellor began, their voice carrying harmonics that suggested deep emotion. "The Kithran people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You have saved not just 5 lives, but preserved bloodlines that stretch back thousands of years." Elena shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "I did what anyone would have done. They were just babies who needed help." The Chancellor's large, multifaceted eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made even Zara feel slightly unnerved. "You misunderstand the magnitude of your actions. In our culture, the protection of young is sacred above all else. What you did, sacrificing your own survival for those not of your species, this elevates you to the highest possible honor in our society." "I really don't need any honors," Elena protested. "I just want to make sure the cubs are okay." "The cubs will be more than okay," the Chancellor assured her. "But there is something you must understand about Kithran physiology and culture. The bond you formed with these young ones during their most vulnerable time. This is not something that can be easily broken." Dr. Kim leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Among our people, the one who preserves life during the first survival crisis becomes what you might call a life parent. It is a bond deeper than genetics, deeper than species. These cubs will carry part of Elena's essence with them for their entire lives." Elena looked alarmed. "What does that mean for them?" "For me, it means," the Chancellor continued, "that you have become part of the royal family of Kithra, not through marriage or adoption, but through something far more profound, through the preservation of life itself." The silence that followed was profound. Zara could see Elena processing this information, her expression shifting from confusion to concern. "But I'm human," Elena said finally. "I don't know anything about being part of a royal family, especially an alien one. I have my own life, my work. Your work brought you into contact with our people in the first place," the Chancellor pointed out. "You were already building bridges between our species. Now that bridge has become something permanent and unbreakable." Over the following days, as they approached Nexus Station, Elena learned more about what her actions had set in motion. The cubs she had saved belonged to 3 different noble houses, and their survival meant the continuation of political and genetic lines that were crucial to Kithran society. More than that, the manner of their rescue, a human sacrificing everything to save alien children, had become something approaching religious significance among the Kithrans. "They're calling it the warming," Torres reported, reading from intelligence briefings. "The story has spread throughout their empire. Elena is being hailed as the first non-Kithran to achieve life honor, their highest possible recognition." Elena groaned, burying her face in her hands. "All I did was try to keep some babies from freezing to death. How did it become such a big deal?" "Because," Dr. Kim said gently, "what you did was physically impossible by most species standards. You survived conditions that should have killed you, without food, for days, all to protect children that weren't even your own species. To the Kithrans, that represents the highest ideal of their culture. And to humans," Zara added, "it represents something we see as perfectly normal, the refusal to let innocence die on our watch." The arrival at Nexus Station was unlike anything Zara had experienced in her years of service. The dock was filled with Kithran dignitaries, human diplomats, and representatives from a dozen other species who had heard the story and wanted to witness what was being called a historic moment in interspecies relations. The 5 cubs, now healthy and active, rode in a special transport carrier that kept them at optimal temperature while allowing them to see their surroundings. They had grown noticeably in the past week, their starlight fur becoming more lustrous, and their large eyes more alert and intelligent. Elena walked beside their carrier, occasionally reaching in to stroke one of them when they became anxious. The bond between them was visible to anyone watching. When she moved away, the cubs would cluster together and make soft distress calls until she returned. Miss Vasquez called a reporter as they made their way through the station. "What was going through your mind during those 3 days on the moon?" Elena paused, considering the question seriously. "Mostly I was trying to figure out how to keep them warm. I remembered reading that Kitharin young needed constant body heat, so I just held them as close as I could and hoped it would be enough." "Weren't you afraid you would die?" "Of course I was afraid," Elena admitted. "But being afraid doesn't change what needs to be done. Those cubs were going to die if someone didn't take care of them. Since I was the only someone available, that made it my responsibility." The simplicity of her answer, the matter-of-fact way she described sacrificing everything for alien children, sent ripples through the gathered crowd. Zara could see the impact on the faces around them, the amazement, the respect, and something else, something that looked like hope. "Commander Chun," whispered one of the human diplomats, pulling Zara aside. "Do you understand what this means for human-alien relations? Elena hasn't just saved 5 Kitharin cubs. She's potentially changed the way the entire galaxy sees our species." Zara nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand that the rescue on that frozen moon had been more than just a heroic act. It had been a demonstration of what humans were capable of when faced with impossible odds and innocent lives hanging in the balance. The cubs were being transferred to the Kitharin delegation when one of them, the smallest, who had been the weakest when they found him, broke away from the group and scrambled back to Elena. He climbed up her leg and settled on her shoulder, purring contentedly. Elena looked helplessly at the Chancellor. "I think he wants to stay with me." 6 months after the rescue at the frozen moon, Elena found herself living a life she could never have imagined. The small Kitharin cub who had refused to leave her side, now named Spark for the way his fur seemed to shimmer with its own light, had become her constant companion. The diplomatic corps had arranged for her to serve as the first human Kitharin cultural liaison, a position that had been created specifically for her unique circumstances. Her apartment on Nexus Station was a marvel of interspecies engineering, with environmental controls that maintained separate climate zones, one for human comfort, one optimized for Kitharin physiology. Spark moved freely between both zones, but he preferred to stay close to Elena, often curled up on her desk while she worked or riding on her shoulder as they walked through the station's corridors. "The cubs are thriving," reported Dr. Yenila, the Kitharin physician who had been monitoring their development. "All 5 have exceeded normal growth parameters for their age group." The trauma of the crash and subsequent survival experience seems to have triggered some kind of adaptive evolution in their genetic expression. Elena looked up from the cultural exchange proposals she was reviewing. "What kind of adaptations?" "Enhanced thermal regulation, for one thing. They can now tolerate a much wider range of temperatures than typical Kitharin young. Their immune systems are also significantly stronger. But, most remarkably, they've developed an unprecedented ability to bond with non-Kitharin species." Spark chirped from his perch on Elena's shoulder, as if he understood what they were discussing. His large, dark eyes held an intelligence that seemed almost adult despite his young age. "The other 4 cubs are exhibiting similar traits?" Elena asked. "Indeed. It's as if the experience of being saved by a human, of forming that crucial life bond during their most vulnerable period, has literally changed their biological makeup. The research team believes it might be an evolutionary response, their bodies adapting to a universe where survival might depend on interspecies cooperation." This news had reached far beyond the medical community. Scientists throughout the galaxy were fascinated by what was being called the Elena effect, the apparent ability of extreme survival situations to trigger genetic adaptations that enhanced interspecies bonding and cooperation. Elena's own life had become the subject of intense study as well. The physical and psychological evaluations she had undergone revealed changes that puzzled human medical experts. Her metabolism had permanently altered, becoming more efficient at heat production and energy conservation. Her stress responses had been recalibrated, allowing her to maintain calm focus in situations that would overwhelm most people. "You've become something new," Dr. Kim told her during one of their regular checkups. "Not just psychologically, but physiologically. Your body has adapted to the role you've chosen to play in the galaxy." "What role is that?" Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Guardian," Dr. Kim said simply. "Protector of the vulnerable, bridge between species, proof that cooperation and sacrifice can literally change the course of evolution." The implications were staggering. Reports were coming in from across human space of similar incidents. Humans putting themselves at extreme risk to save alien lives, often in situations that should have been impossible to survive. More than that, these acts of cross-species rescue were creating bonds and adaptations that were changing both the rescuers and the rescued. Commander Zura Chun visited Elena regularly, their friendship having grown from the shared experience of that first rescue. During one such visit, she brought news that would change everything again. "The Kithran Royal Council has made a formal proposal to the Galactic Federation," Zara announced, settling into the human comfort zone of Elena's apartment while Spark investigated her uniform pockets for treats. "They want to establish a new branch of emergency response specifically designed around human rescue capabilities." Elena paused in her tea preparation. "What kind of emergency response?" "They're calling it the Guardian Corps. Humans working alongside alien partners, specializing in impossible rescues and survival situations. They want you to head the program." "Me?" Elena laughed, but there was uncertainty in her voice. "I'm not a soldier or an explorer. I'm a cultural liaison who got lucky once." "Got lucky?" Zara shook her head. "Elena, there have been 17 similar incidents in the past 6 months. Humans saving alien lives in impossible situations, creating bonds that are literally changing the genetic expression of both species. This isn't luck. This is evolution in action." Spark climbed from Zara's shoulder to Elena's, settling into his favorite spot and beginning to purr. The sound had a calming effect on both humans, another adaptation that the researchers found fascinating. "The Federation Council is calling it the next stage of galactic civilization," Zara continued. "The development of true interspecies symbiosis, triggered by acts of ultimate sacrifice and protection. And it's humans who are leading this change." Elena looked out the viewport at the swirling traffic of Nexus Station. Ships from dozens of different species going about their daily business, most of them barely acknowledging the others. But she had started to notice changes there too. More mixed crews, more interspecies partnerships, more willingness to help when help was needed. "What would this Guardian Corps actually do?" she asked. "Exactly what you did on that moon," Zara replied. "Go where others can't, survive what others can't survive, and refuse to let innocents die regardless of species or circumstances. But you wouldn't be doing it alone. Each Guardian would be paired with alien partners whose abilities complement human strengths. Like Spark and me. Like Spark and you. He's already learning to extend his thermal regulation abilities to help you survive extreme cold. The medical team thinks that within a few years, the two of you together will be able to survive environmental conditions that would kill either of you alone." Elena considered this, absently stroking Spark's shimmering fur. The idea should have been terrifying, deliberately seeking out impossible rescue situations, putting herself at constant risk. But instead, she felt a sense of rightness, as if this was what she had always been meant to do. "There's something else," Zara said quietly. "The other 4 cubs want to join the program when they're old enough. All of them. They want to honor the life bond by dedicating themselves to protecting others the way you protected them." Elena's eyes filled with tears. Those 5 small beings she had kept alive through sheer stubbornness and love were ready to spend their lives paying that gift forward. "When do we start?" she asked. Spark's purr intensified, and Elena could swear she heard satisfaction in the harmonic frequencies. The smallest, weakest cub who had nearly died on a frozen moon was ready to help save the galaxy, one impossible rescue at a time. The Guardian Corps would officially launch within a year, but its first mission had already been accomplished 6 months ago on a barren moon where a human woman chose to sacrifice everything rather than let innocents perish. The rest, as they say, was just the beginning of a new chapter in the story of life among the stars. 3 years had passed since Elena Vasquez became the first human to be honored with Kithran Life Honor, and the galaxy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. The Guardian Corps had grown from experimental program to an essential service, with Guardian teams responding to impossible rescue situations across civilized space. Elena stood in the observation deck of the Guardian Corps headquarters, watching the latest class of trainees practice their bonding exercises in the zero-gravity training chamber below. Humans and aliens working together, learning to synchronize their abilities, preparing to face the impossible together. Spark, now nearly adult-sized and resplendent in his full starlight coat, perched beside her with the dignity of his royal heritage. The bond between them had evolved far beyond what anyone had expected. They could now share sensory input across species barriers, feel each other's emotions, and coordinate their survival abilities in ways that seemed almost telepathic. "The Andorian situation is getting worse," reported Lieutenant Commander Sarah Okonkwo, Elena's second-in-command and leader of Guardian Team Beta. "The mining colony is trapped 3 kilometers underground, and the cave system is still collapsing. Regular rescue teams can't reach them." Elena nodded, already running calculations in her head. "How many trapped?" 47 beings, mixed species. They have maybe 18 hours of breathable air left, and the temperature is dropping fast due to broken heating systems. It was exactly the kind of situation the Guardian Corps had been created for. Impossible circumstances, innocent lives at stake, conventional rescue attempts likely to fail. Elena felt the familiar stirring of determination that had kept her going through 3 days on a frozen moon. "Team Alpha will deploy in 30 minutes, she decided. "Alert Dr. Kim and the medical team. We'll need full environmental support and trauma care standing by." Spark chirped agreement, his own excitement at the upcoming mission vibrating through their shared bond. In the 3 years since his rescue, he had become not just Elena's partner, but one of the most effective rescue specialists in the Corps. His enhanced thermal regulation could keep both of them alive in extreme cold, while his natural Kithran ability to navigate in darkness made him invaluable in underground operations. The launch bay buzzed with controlled urgency as Team Alpha prepared for departure. Elena's team now included Marcus Rodriguez, a human who specialized in extreme pressure environments, and Whistle and Wind, a Zephyrian whose gaseous form could slip through cracks no solid being could navigate. Together with Spark, they had achieved a 97% success rate on missions that other teams couldn't even attempt. "Environmental conditions at the site are brutal," reported the mission coordinator. "Surface temperatures are minus 40 degrees Celsius. The cave system is flooded with toxic gases, and seismic activity is increasing. The window for extraction is closing fast." Elena checked her equipment one final time, then lifted Spark to his position on her shoulder. The weight and warmth of him there had become as natural as breathing, a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. "Remember," she addressed her team, "we go in together, we come out together, and we bring everyone home. No exceptions." The descent to Andoria Prime took 6 hours, during which Elena reviewed the geological surveys and casualty reports. The mining accident had been catastrophic. An underground explosion had triggered a cave-in that buried the entire third-level excavation site. The trapped miners included Andorians, humans, Kithrans, and members of 2 other species, all of whom had different environmental needs and survival capabilities. It's like a puzzle, Elena murmured to Spark as they studied the cave system's layout. We need to find a path that can accommodate everyone, through conditions that should kill us all. Spark's response was a complex harmony of sounds that she had learned to interpret as confidence and determination. He had grown up believing that impossible rescues were simply what beings did for each other, and his calm certainty had a steadying effect on the entire team. The surface of Andoria Prime was even worse than the reports had suggested. The mining facility was a twisted wreck of metal and stone, with emergency lights flickering sporadically through clouds of toxic smoke. The ground shook regularly with aftershocks from the continuing seismic activity. Entrance to the cave system is blocked, Marcus reported, studying his scanners. We'll need to go through the ventilation shafts. Those shafts are barely wide enough for a human. Whistle-in Wind observed, their translucent form rippling with concern. And they're filled with poisonous gases. Elena nodded grimly. It was exactly the kind of challenge that had led to the Guardian Corps' creation, a situation where conventional physics said success was impossible, but where human stubbornness and interspecies cooperation might find a way. Whistle, you go first and clear the gases from a section at a time. Marcus, you'll monitor structural integrity as we descend. Spark, and I will navigate and maintain communications with the trapped miners. The descent through the ventilation system was harrowing even by Guardian Corps standards. The shafts were barely wide enough for Elena to squeeze through, and the toxic gases burned their throats even through their breathing apparatus. But Whistle-in Wind's ability to absorb and neutralize the poisonous compounds created pockets of breathable air, while Marcus's enhanced pressure tolerance allowed him to detect structural weaknesses before they became fatal collapses. Spark proved invaluable in the darkness, his enhanced vision guiding them through turns and obstacles that would have stopped them cold. More than that, his thermal abilities were keeping Elena's core temperature stable in the frigid environment, allowing her to function when hypothermia should have incapacitated her. Contact, Elena whispered into her communicator as they reached the trapped miners. 47 souls accounted for multiple injuries, but everyone's alive. What they found in the collapsed mining chamber was a testament to interspecies cooperation under pressure. The trapped beings had organized themselves into survival groups, sharing resources and body heat across species lines. The Andorians, with their natural cold resistance, had been protecting the more vulnerable humans and Kitherans, while the humans had taken charge of rationing the limited food supplies. You came, whispered Dr. Thane, the mining operations supervisor, as Elena squeezed through the gap they had opened in the debris. We heard about the Guardian Corps, but we didn't think. We never leave anyone behind, Elena said simply, already assessing the group's condition and the structural situation. That's what we do. The extraction took 14 hours of careful, methodical work. Each rescued miner had to be guided through the treacherous ventilation system, with Whistle-in Wind clearing gases, Marcus monitoring for collapses, and Elena and Spark providing thermal support and navigation. It should have been impossible. 47 beings of different species, with different physiological needs, extracted through a route that barely accommodated one. But they did it. All 47 miners were brought to the surface alive, with injuries ranging from minor to serious, but none fatal. The rescue made headlines across the galaxy, but for Elena and her team, it was simply another day's work. The Guardian Corps has now completed over 300 impossible rescues, reported the galactic news feeds. Their success rate continues to defy conventional understanding of physics, biology, and survival science. What the news reports couldn't capture was the real transformation that was taking place. Each rescue created new bonds between species, new adaptations, new possibilities for cooperation. The galaxy was becoming a place where beings looked out for each other across species lines, where the impossible was routinely attempted in service of preserving life. Elena stood once again in the observation deck of Guardian Corps headquarters, watching new trainees practice their bonding exercises. Spark, now a full adult and beginning to train his own human partner, sat beside her with the contentment of a being who had found his purpose in life. The Terran Council wants to expand the Guardian program, Sarah reported. They're proposing Guardian academies on 12 different worlds, with training programs designed for every known sentient species. Elena smiled, thinking back to that frozen moon where she had simply tried to keep 5 small cubs from dying. She had never imagined that her stubborn refusal to let innocence perish would spark a transformation that would reshape galactic civilization. "Approve the expansion," she said. "Every being in the galaxy deserves someone willing to do the impossible to save them." Spark's purr of agreement resonated through the observation deck, a sound that had become synonymous with hope across the stars. The Guardian Corps would continue to grow, continue to prove that cooperation, sacrifice, and the simple refusal to abandon the helpless could overcome any obstacle. The universe was vast and often cruel, but it was also full of beings willing to risk everything to protect innocence. And sometimes, Elena reflected, that was enough to change everything.